go live. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alicia Johnson, and I'm the Executive Director here at Step Up Savannah, and we are so excited to welcome our digital coach and from our Grow with Google partner, Justin Dawkins. And Justin is going to help us today by tickling our thoughts and our processes around design thinking and innovation. And although we specifically targeted entrepreneurs, we wanted to share this particular content and workshop with our entire partner community, because this also works well in any workplace. Is that correct, Justin?
That is correct. Anywhere.
Awesome.
Anywhere, anytime.
Awesome. So we are excited, and we don't want to take up any of Justin's time. We want him to have the maximum amount of time to engage with you. So Justin, why don't you take it away?
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm really, really happy to be here to support you and Savannah, the beautiful city of Savannah. It's one of my favorite places in the world and the surrounding community. My name is Justin Dawkins, and this is design thinking for entrepreneurs, but in actuality, it could be used anywhere. And it's actually something we do every day. I'm here to just give you a process so that you can be more effective in the way that you take ideas out of your brain and out of our minds and out of our imaginations and actually bring them into the real world. So I'm happy to share a little bit more about myself. Again, my name is Justin Dawkins. I am your Georgia Grow with Google digital coach. I have been a coach with Grow with Google now for 5 years, believe it or not. It's kind of hard to believe. We started out as a small little pilot program in 7 cities scattered throughout the country, and now we are 20 coaches large now. So we're all over the place, which is a wonderful thing. And they have recently expanded our territories from our cities. My city was Atlanta, into entire states. And in some cases, they're splitting the states in half, like in California and Texas. We actually have a East Texas coach and a West Texas coach. So really excited to be here as your Georgia Grow with Google digital coach. That is not the only hat that I wear. I wear a couple more. So I'm the CEO of a marketing and technology firm called Inflex Digital Studio, where we build marketing and technology solutions for mostly medium and large corporations. Then I also very blessed and thankful to have raised a little over $50 million to invest in Black innovators and entrepreneurs through a business called Collab Capital. So we're really excited about that. You can email me and ask me any questions about today's content, anything that you feel like is missing, or an epiphany that you have a little bit later on. You can email me at justindawkins@google.com. That is my email address. And then if you would like to just let Google know that you were here, on Instagram in particular, you can tag me at jdawkinsatl and feel free to follow. I'm usually just talking about entrepreneurship and Black people and culture and all these things. But also you can tag the coaches program itself, and you can feel free to share this with your family members, your colleagues, your coworkers, anyone throughout the country. We're here to help you by providing free resources and content and information, all to further your lives, your businesses, your skills, etc. So really excited to hop in. It's enough about me. This is not about me. This is actually about you. So what you'll learn very quickly if you attend any Grow with Google workshop is we always have an agenda. Make sure we have bookends to our learning. So we're going to talk about what is design thinking. It may be a newer phrase for some of you, maybe something you've heard before, but not necessarily know what that all involves. So I'm going to walk through that process. I'm going to talk about understanding your audience. And so that audience might be customers, it may be partners, clients. We're going to talk about defining who your audience is and what makes them tick, right? So I'm going to talk about empathy quite a bit today. Then we're going to identify their challenges, understand how to empathize with your potential customers or users. And then we're going to craft and test our solutions, right? So we're going to get them out of our brains and really focus on how we bring those things into the real world to solve our user, our customers' problems or challenges. All right. So if you have not already, you definitely want to use a Google account, but you can do this using pen and paper. If you have an iPad or something like that, everything that we're going to talk about today, it's totally optional how you do it, but I do encourage you to kind of do this in real time. You'll get much more out of it, and the process will become much more familiar to you as you replicate it more and more, hopefully more and more going forward. So you want to start with a Google account if you like. This is just walking how to do it in the cloud. So use go to the home page, click apps, Google Drive to access a file, and then if you want to start a new document, or you go to Google Apps and start a new file. And this could be just a simple Google document. It doesn't have to be a Google Sheet or slide or anything like that. It's just a good old-fashioned Google Doc. All right, it's just walking us through that. So you want to create a blank document, and then we're just going to hop right into the process, right? So we're going to maximize our time here together. So just create a new document, and let's get started. So first things first is definitions, right? In the investment world, we call it a term sheet. Let's start with some terms so that we can get more comfortable with them as they pop up throughout our workshop experience today. They are not foreign to us. So the first one is design thinking. So what is design thinking? All right, design thinking is a creative problem-solving process, keyword there's process, that focuses on a user-centered approach. So we're trying to get out of our head and focus on our users, our customers, to create a solution that is technologically and economically feasible, right? So taking those really big ambitions, those things that we think are great ideas, we want to make sure they're actually real ideas by making them user-centered, and then we want to make sure we can actually do something about them, right? We can actually put that thing out into the world. So that could be a mobile app, it could be a piece of software, but it could also just be a process that you implement into your business or into your everyday life, right? So here are the 5 steps. If you're going to take a screenshot anywhere throughout this workshop, I encourage you to do it right here, right? This is the process, right? You can dive deeper into any one of these kind of 5 steps at any point in time, and we're going to go through each of them today. All right, so the first one is empathize, right? This is all about observing, engaging, and immersing ourselves. As the old adage is, put yourself in someone else's shoes, walk a mile in their shoes, and that's what we're going to talk about today. 2 is defining, right? This is to express the problem in the form of point of views, right? So looking at it through the lens of our user or customer. We're going to talk about ideation, right? So this is about identifying problems to find solutions. Then we're going to get into the fun part, the prototyping. We actually tend to skip over these first 2 steps and go right into the ideation and the prototyping process, which is like, how do I tinker? What do I need? How much money do I need? How much, like, do I need a developer? Do I need a marketer? Do I need a designer? All these things, we tend to jump to steps 3 and 4. And then 5, we're going to talk about test, learning, iterating, and repeating to refine our concepts, ideas. And if it's something that's monetizable, this will be a good place to learn, or a good place to learn how much someone is willing to pay for said solution. All right. So these are our 5 steps. Let's hop right into a couple of examples of what design thinking looks like. If you look across the top, you'll see these gray kind of icons, these outlines. These are all familiar. It's a television, house, and a car, right? But what you may not know is that from those technologies, those innovations, additional innovations have occurred because of design thinking and the design thinking process. So, right, one of them is on-demand television. Once upon a time, you had to rush home to catch cartoons at 3-4 o'clock p.m. and you really didn't have an option unless you had a VCR. But now we have on-demand television. That came out of the process of identifying ways to deliver content to those when they wanted to watch it, as opposed to when it was originally aired. Another example is foot-activated car doors. You've seen this. They make anything from a hand gesture to a foot gesture. What is this all about? This is all about observing people with babies, with groceries, with large items in their hands, but they need to open the door safely and securely without damaging the car or hurting themselves, right? So now we have foot-activated car doors. And then ride and home sharing, right? So now we're in a place in history where a home is becoming even more valuable asset. If you have an extra room or if you have extra property, it's even better, where you can actually rent that home out, right? So people always need a place to lay their heads and or be transported around. So now we have ride and home sharing. And these all came out of observing, empathizing, and then developing ideas through what was observed. All right, so let's get into the process. The first thing is empathize. All right, so your goal, and you'll see goals throughout this entire experience today, is to connect to the user's stories, emotions, and your insight about them, right? What you believe is was critical for you to understand in order to ultimately provide value to them. In this case, we're going to start with a question. And I always like questions because they can create prompts. Who is the user? And I don't just mean, oh, it's a woman or it's a man, or it's even demographic information, like it's a woman that lives in Savannah or Atlanta. We want to get a little bit more granular because we want to start to put ourselves in their shoes, regardless of, and we want to step outside of our thinking and get into theirs. All right. So understanding your users, here are examples with some specificity, right? Women of color, right? Looking for socially conscious brands. Notice that there's detail here, right? Parents of young children, but yet not yet in school, right? So these are going to be children that are still fairly young, or maybe even homeschooled at a very early age. Seniors over 70, right? Very specific number, and single member homes, right? So thinking about those that might be in a retirement community or a senior community. And then college students seeking temporary housing, right? So very specific. We're going to talk about how we're going to get even more specific, but now you can start to see how we want to make sure we're adding details so that we make sure that we're building things for the right people group and not just building things because we think it's a good idea. All right, so you want to inspire new thinking by discovering what people really need. Emphasis here is really need, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to spend 3 minutes. Think about the previous slide, and I can even go back. We're going to spend like just a couple minutes. We're going to select an audience, right? And so here's some examples. You can start this process now as we're going. Busy professionals, right? After school teachers, parents with young children, etc. And use Google Docs or your notepad, whatever you may have, to write down a list of at least 5 challenges that they face, right? So start at that high level. And so I'm gonna go back a slide, right? Women of color looking for social conscious brands, seniors over 70s and single member homes, whatever it may be, start there. You wanna put that at the top of your paper. And then you wanna create some sub bullets around what are some of the challenges that they face. So women of color looking for socially conscious brands. We'll go over a couple examples a little later, but just think about all the things that they may be experiencing and think about their entire day, and think about what it is that they are likely to encounter, and don't get to answers yet. Just think about the problem. Focus on those, 3, 4, 5 challenges that they face throughout the day. All right. So let's take 3 minutes is 12:12. So let's come back at 12:14, 12:15, and then we'll continue to move ahead. So 2.5, 3 minutes, and starting now. And if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat. The chat is a great place to let us know if there are any challenges, anything that you may be getting stuck on throughout the process, right? I love it, Melissa, with the note link. I appreciate that. That's a great place to remain collaborative. I love that. Just gonna drink good water. For those that may be struggling or challenged, think about, I would say, sun up to sundown. So after they wake up, what are the things that are on their mind? What do you think is the first thing that they're thinking about or experiencing when they first wake up? Are they thinking about their kids first? Are they thinking about working out? Are they meditating or praying in the morning? And then what is likely the next thing they're going to do? Are they getting up and brushing their teeth, taking a shower? Are they going to work out? Are they breakfast first? Like literally walk through their day and find those challenge points, and particularly points where they may be experiencing certain emotions that are outside of peaceful or restful, right? So that'd be another great way to think about it. So let's continue to move forward. You can continue to do this throughout the process. There's no wrong answers in this. That's what makes this process so fun. There's no tests. The tests all come later when you're actually starting to bring these things into the world, and you want to make sure that you're building the right thing. All right. So let's get into our next phase, and that is the define phase. This is actually my favorite phase. It's also one of the most challenging, so it's really, really important to kind of lock in, block out any distractions, at least temporarily, and really, really focus on your goal here, which is to analyze your observations about that user, right? So we just thought about, we have our user at the top, we've listed out 4 or 5 things. Now let's talk about the observations. And then you want to be able to synthesize those observations, to define them as core problems. And you want to do that in a way, in a format, which we call a problem statement. So a problem statement is almost like the anti-vision statement or the anti-mission statement, right? So if you think about when you're forming a company, you probably were told, you want to create a brand name, you want to make a vision statement, like what does the world look like when you're successful, and you want to do a mission statement, which is like, if I break down that vision, what are the things that we have to do in order to get to that vision? Well, before all of those things becomes a problem statement. What is it, the problem that we're ultimately trying to solve, which is the reason or the why we created the business, the technology, the mobile app, the service, whatever it may be, right? So what is a problem statement? All right. So as to march us forward there, I break it down into, I like to break it down a little bit more just to help people walk through the process of cultivating, I like to say cultivating the problem statement. So the first thing I like to do is focus on those user characteristics, right? So remember, we are trying to put ourselves in our user's shoes. And so there's going to be attributes, right? They're sometimes called attributes and include things like my age, right? So am I in my mid 30s, my late 30s, mid 20s, am I a graduate? Some of their job responsibilities. Are they managing people? Are they managed? What does that look like? Are they business owners, right? Software that they may be proficient in. Is there any type of hardware they have to use, right? Are they carpenters and they have hammers and nails, or are they machinery? Are they driving cars, right? Environmental, computer experience, and web experience. These are all things that make them up. These are attributes of them, right? Some may call it the metadata, right? So adjectives are good, adjectives, are good here, right? Busy, proficient, tired, frustrated. So user characteristics. So just something to think about. And then you want to roll that into a user need. This is the genesis of our ideas and the starting point to the problem. It is not the why, but it should begin to illuminate the pain point or the opportunity, right? So user characteristics, just continue to think about those things. You don't have to write anything down, because I'm gonna give you a template, I'm gonna give you a primer in just a second to help you actually do this. But these are ways to think about the user characteristic and the user need. So let's get into the next portion, the next portion. The third piece, so the first step was, go back, the first step was user characteristic, busy professional that's great with working in Microsoft Word. That might be a user characteristic. You identify user need, and now we move forward to the key insight. The key insight is the thing that is that acute and deep pain point, right? This is the thing that keeps them up at night, as we say in the startup world. What's bothering you? What is it that is, because it's not solved, they are not having a good day, right? They're stressed. It is preoccupying their mind. It is occupying space and time that it does not deserve, or they don't want it to, all right? And if without a solution, they lose time, money, energy, sleep, etc., right? The deeper the pain point, the better. And we want to stay away from symptoms. And the way that we do that is to keep asking ourselves why. Why are they so busy? And then whatever the answer to that is, ask yourself why again. We sometimes call that the 3 or 4 or 5 whys. And the deeper you keep going, the better, the more refined the problem will be, and then ultimately your solution will be. So symptom level stuff is going to keep your business surface level, where if you get to the actual acute pain point, now you're into what I call the surgery level solutions, which are typically of more value because they are actually addressing the core problem, right? So let's pull it all together. I've said a lot, but let's pull it all together. This is a template. You can use this. I encourage you to capture this, and you'll notice that it took those 3 areas that we just talked about, those 3, 4 areas, and now it's pulling it together, right? So Uh, Whenever we're creating a persona, never hurts to give that persona a name. You can make up the name. It could be someone that you know that is experiencing this problem. I always encourage people to stay away from yourself, right? So I wouldn't use Justin, but I may use someone that I know specifically that's experiencing the pain, just so you don't kind of fall back into the trap of building something only because you feel it, right? You want to make sure that you are able to step outside of yourself into other people's experiences. And now let's get into the rest of it. So Sam is here's that user characteristic. Remember we mentioned this before, a busy manager. So the adjectives are really good here. Who needs a way to integrate healthy eating habits, right? This is the need, because he doesn't want to feel like he's on a diet, right? So the user need and the insight, right? A moment ago, I'll take a step back just for a second. We talked about that key insight. Remember, we want to go deeper and deeper and deeper. So the answer to one of my questions when I was asking myself those whys is because he doesn't want to feel like he's on a diet. That means there's a consequence. There's something that happens when he does feel like on a diet. Maybe he abandons it easily and quickly. If I'm on a diet, I feel like it's temporary, so he doesn't do it, right? So he needs something that actually integrates more easily and more seamlessly. And so it's to actually help build better eating habits, because the moment that he feels like he's on a diet, he abandons it, right? That may be another way to even rewrite the statement. You might write the statement, by the way, several times for the same problem, just to refine it. So let's get into it. So now now that we have that characteristic and we've identified the problem, we're going to synthesize a problem statement that clearly defines our goal. Define the problem as a problem statement in a human-centered manner. That's why we like to put a name on it. User name, right? So Sam is a busy manager, which is that user characteristic, who needs what? A way to integrate healthy eating habits because he doesn't want to feel like he's on a diet. You might even say because when he feels like he's on a diet, he abandons it, right? So let's spend 3 minutes, spend a little bit of time here, 3-4 minutes to work on that statement. Again, there's no wrong answers, but just try it out. And if you're willing to, use the chat, drop in your problem statement, type it out. There's no wrong, like I said, there's no wrong answers. Type it out. I'll give a little bit of feedback, help us refine, get a little bit better. Drop it in the chat, and then we'll come back. It's 12:22. At 12:25, we'll do a little bit of a share out for those that are willing to share, and then we'll move forward in the rest of the ideation process. All right. So let's take 3 minutes and starting now. All right, for those that are on the Zoom with us today, I just dropped in a little bit of copy just to help us continue to think about it. Just copying to make it a little bit easier to copy and paste it. Just a little template, replace it. It just says username. It's the same thing that's on the screen. Username is user characteristic, who needs, user need, because key insight. All right, so I just dropped that in there so you can copy paste it easily. You can do this several times, even focusing on the same problem. As a matter of fact, some of your favorite companies and brands are especially those that have popped up over the last 20 years. I say popped up like this overnight, but that we've gotten more familiar and comfortable with. They actually started to combine, right? This is how you go from a small business to a bigger business, is that you find problems with the same customer, right? So that same user persona, but they have multiple problems. And what they do is they build solutions within their product or product sets that ultimately solve or serve the same customer. A very simple example of this is like feminine hygiene products or CPG brands, right? Everyone needs to be clean. They want to clean their hair, their beards, their feet. So like they produce more and more products, all from the same company, but solving different problems, but oftentimes for the same users. All right. So those are just examples there. So we'll spend another 30 seconds or so. And again, if anybody has an example, I encourage you to drop it into the chat. If not, we'll keep it. I'll assume that you're doing well, and we'll keep moving forward. All right. So about another 30 seconds, and we'll keep rolling. This is just to put it back up briefly. All right. So ideate. This is the part that we skip to, right? So we're in the shower and we have that light bulb moment. We almost break our necks stumbling out of the shower, trying to figure out like, I need to write it down. I don't want to forget this idea, because we hop to these light bulb moments. But what we don't do are the 2 steps before. So now we're getting to the fun part, the parts I know that you'd be most excited about. So let's get into the process, right? So ideating, your goal, this is where you engage in unfiltered, unrestrained brainstorming. How can we solve for this obstacle? So we just spent the last 15, 20 minutes coming with a process to identify the problem. Now we're going to spend the rest of our time today tackling it, right? How can we solve for the obstacle? All right, so the next portion of our experience is called the crazy 8s. So whether you have a piece of paper that you fold to create 8 squares, if you have a tablet, you have a blank screen, you want to create a new visual, you want to split it up into 8 sections. However you do it, it's completely up to you, but I encourage you to do it. It's a lot of fun, all right? So crazy 8s. You want to create a table 2x4, like I said, and write out an idea. Don't worry about feasibility. And I say big and crazy. So big and crazy, I'm going to encourage you to think about it as if I gave you a $50 million budget and you had to spend it all, right? So this will force you to think really, really, really big. And I'm going to give you a really, really short time frame in order to do it. So the example of this is I need to build a rocket, right, in 60 days. How much time and energy and resources and people would I need to build a rocket in 60 days? I want you to think that big. Lots of resources flooding in. So the ideas can be crazy. They can be, you can build on them. So there's actually a version of this where it's called the yes and method, which is a way to not shrink ideas, but instead grow them. So you may start out with a basic idea, right? So thinking about Sam, our busy professional who needs a way to establish better eating habits. We may start out with something very simple as a mobile app that recommends healthy lunch options. And instead of coming up with a whole new idea, we may just add on ideas to that basic idea, which would be, okay, it's a mobile app that recommends healthy lunch options that will give him choices. So we would say yes, and that mobile application will connect to a friend who is also having that challenge, and they can hold each other accountable and see what each other is eating. And then you would say yes, and when they both do well and hit their healthy eating goals, it allows them to share it out to social media together. And then yes, and if they don't, then it charges their bank account $10. And so then that $10 is pooled. And then yes, and so you keep asking, keep saying yes, and to build on the idea, to make the ideas crazy, crazy big. Much more complex. We're going to talk about how to simplify later, but the idea is to get bigger, bigger, bigger. So it says crazy 8s, but it could be crazy 24. Like keep going, add features, make it robust. But remember, this is focused on your problem statement. You want to make sure that it is ideas that are crazy in nature, but still pointing back to that deep pain point and ultimately the problem statement that we defined in the last section. All right. So here are some examples to get our brains going a little bit. Remember women of color looking for socially conscious brands, right? So in my crazy eights, and you can sketch these things out. You can just write down what they do. You don't have to necessarily get into drawing. If that's not your thing, that's okay. You can just bullet point it out, right? You can say, okay, in square number one, a program that donates an item to someone in need with every purchase, right? That woman of color is looking for that socially conscious brand. That's a great example, right? I would say yes, and that program also comes with an app that helps you find local fresh produce, right? It can be separate ideas, it could be the same. It does not matter. Again, it's unfiltered. Don't worry about shrinking yourself, shrinking your ideas. Just get them out of your head, as many as you possibly can, in just a few minutes. Here's some more examples. So remember, college students seeking temporary housing. An online roommate matching service for students might be an idea. A building with furnished temporary rentals to make it easy and convenient for them. Online learning programs, right? These are all very simple ideas. If you can add more to them using the yes and method I just described, or you can, again, just keep going, keep going, keep going. So let's take 3 minutes. So it's 12:30. We're going to come back to 12:33. Use that Google Doc or a sheet of paper to write down 8 possible solutions to solve the problem statement you created before. Any idea or solution that comes to mind is welcome. Again, I'm not here to tell you no. Matter of fact, no should not be in the vocabulary. I can't, we can't, that's too much money. Actually, the more expensive it is, the better. Because the next 2 phases, I'm going to show you how to break that thing down and make it more feasible and attainable for you. So don't worry too much about feasibility right now. Just get them out of your head. So let's spend 3 minutes, come back at 12:33, and we will continue to move forward to the prototyping phase, which is where we're going to start to take those big crazy ideas and actually make them tangible and real, and get them out into the world quickly. All right. So 3 minutes, starting about 30 seconds ago. All right, let's move forward. Remember, this process is repeatable. So there's everything that I'm describing to you today is a process. It is a method. You should use it as many times as you need. You should make decisions quickly. And then as things don't work out, that's fine. The goal is to learn quickly, discard the things that aren't working, and then improve on the things that are. All right, so let's get into the fun stuff, the super fun stuff. So the crazy ace is pretty cool. Or prototyping, getting that thing out of paper form or on tablets, whatever it is, and actually building something so that people can start to interact with it, right? So let's get into prototyping. And so your goal, prototyping is to draw out or craft what is actually possible right now. What can you do right now? Keep in mind your minimal viable product. What is an MVP? Well, here's an illustration of an MVP. Let's assume that the goal is a efficient and effective mode of transportation. What is not an MVP is just the wheel, right? Wheel and axles doesn't get our user there either. Even a chassis, right? Wheels and a chassis, even a whole car minus a steering wheel and headlights is not safe, right? But at the end, finally they get what they want. But look at the emojis underneath, right? Sad, 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 sad. So that means they're still experiencing their pain point, and they only ever get where they're going and are satisfied when you actually spend thousands upon thousands of dollars and hours building an entire car. But if you wanted to at least get your user, in this case, from point A to point B, you might start with something like a skateboard, then turn that skateboard into a scooter, then a bicycle and a motorcycle, right? And it's the natural evolution and iteration of product development. And notice that the emojis get a little bit better and better, right? So we can continue to bring delight and happiness and joy and satisfaction to our customer along the way, right? So more like the bottom, less like the top, all right? So how did we start? We just came up with all these crazy ideas. Many of them I don't know how to do. We're going to talk about how you can actually break those things down even further. Where do I begin? Well, pick one. Pick one of your feasible, I would say the most feasible, and flesh out how you would build that solution today, right? So think about the technology needed, the time required, money needed, resources available. When I say technology needed, it could be something as simple as, okay, I need to know how old someone is. I need to know where they where they are geographically. I need to know how much money they make. I need to know if they have kids or not. Do they have a job? Well, how would you get that information? You may say, well, I need a form, right? That could just be the technology. I need a form to capture that initial information. And then you keep going throughout the rest of your process. So if it's Sam and we know he's a busy professional, it may say, okay, you may want to ask, well, does he have any allergies? Right? And then we'll talk about how you may want to continue to build on those ideas using technology. All right, so let's do this. So that's your goal here. Now we're going to think about how we bringing those ideas to market using test, right? So your goal during testing, and this is the final phase, to test the complete product using the best solutions identified during the prototyping phase. Remember that form that we just created? It might be create a nice looking form using Typeform or using Google Forms or something like that. You want to refine and alter the process as needed. A lot of these things that you're going to do are going to be manual in nature, but the goal is to make sure that it is a repeatable and iterative process. So what is an iterative process, right? The iterative process, sorry about the screen jump. The iterative process is literally building on your ideas. Get feedback, refine, test again. Get more feedback, refine, test again, add features as you go along. All right. So any questions there? Is that clear to everyone? I'll make sure that everybody is good to go before we review and wrap up. So the testing phase is actually where we take that form, we create a landing page, or we send it to an existing customer and say, hey, I'm getting ready to launch a new service, or I'm getting ready to launch a new product. I would love your feedback. Can you fill out this form? That's the MVP. You just brought that crazy idea to life just by sending them a form to capture that initial information. And then you can use additional tools and technologies to extend that. It may be something as creating a Google slide that provides them with tips on eating habits, It could be a newsletter, right? Using a MailChimp or some other email service provider to actually deliver that value to them. If you're pairing people, you may create matching criteria, right? So you may have Sam on one side and Lisa on the other side. You may pair them up because they have similar goals or similar schedules, right? So all you have to do is think about that busy user or that working mom or that whomever it may be, and then think about that journey and what it is, how you would ultimately like to deliver the solutions that you came up with. All right, so that is our goal. That is the process. And just to recap, you want to first empathize, which is observe, engage, and immerse yourself in your user's perspective. You want to define, express the problem in the form of problem statement or point of views. You want to ideate, you want to identify problems to find those solutions. Remember, don't skip over steps 1 and 2 just to get to 3. Then you want to prototype, come up with, wireframes, notes, pull all these things together to get your ideas out into the world. And then you want to test, learn, iterate, and repeat. All right. So just a few resources to kind of wrap us up and make sure that you walk away with even more than what you maybe expected. Let's talk about your homework, right? This is homework that's not going to be graded, but this is a kind of some additional, I like to say, tools you can put in your bag as you continue to learn about the ideation process, learn about design thinking. A great way to break down, or the great way to start is to break your product down into manageable pieces. And here's some examples. So you can create a network or community and conduct interviews to refine key insights. So remember those key insights with us. Start a Facebook group that talks more about it. You can research tools for your MVP, and there's some on the right that I'll go quickly through in just a moment. What can you do manually and automate later, right? Don't be afraid to get in there and get dirty, because the closer you are to your user customer earlier, the better your product or your solution will be. And then here's just some solutions, right? So Zapier is a technology that allows you to connect other technologies to each other, get them to talk to each other, to exchange data and information. Use Google Forms or Typeforms, as I mentioned before. Airtable is a really, really powerful tool. I actually use it quite a lot. There are other no-code solutions. So if you're trying to build a mobile app or a piece of software, you can check those out. MailChimp and other email service providers. We have a bias for MailChimp. They were born and bred here in Atlanta, Georgia. Text messaging, SMS, right? So that's a great tool to connect with consumers. Observe the community. Get out into the world. If they're online, create it. See what they're talking about. See what other problems they're having. Stripe is a great way to actually get payments going and invoicing, particularly if you want to build a payment tool or actually have payments as a part of your solution. And then Mighty Networks is a great place to create your own communities, your own social networks or micro communities for whatever people group that you may be solving for, busy professionals as an example. All right. So I want to thank everyone for the time. I'm going to open it up for questions, but please fill out the survey. We'll also send this in a follow-up for you as well. We'd love to have your feedback, love to get any insight. Remember, my email is justindawkins@google.com. I will drop it in the chat here for anyone that wants to send me a note and say, hey, I have an idea. Can I run it by you? I hear ideas all the time. Don't be shy. But I just want to thank everyone for your time and your patience today. Hopefully this was helpful. Remember, this is a process you can use everywhere. You can use it in your workplace. You can use it on your small business or your startup, but you can also use it at home. You can use this as a way to find solutions around the house. Many a time, Shark Tank participants were probably sitting around thinking about a problem they had or experienced, observed that their friends, family members were experiencing it as well. And that's where some of those great ideas, and you've heard those stories before if you've ever watched that show. So those are all started with some form or flavor of the design thinking process. So I hope this was very, very helpful. I want to thank our partners at Step Up Savannah for, I'm going to stop sharing now, for their time and the opportunity, and really just look forward to doing even more workshops in the future, bringing you more great content, resources, and information to help you further in your lives and your businesses.
Thank you, Justin, for such a great and interactive workshop. And also thank you for the great information. As you mentioned, this information and these tools that you've equipped us with can be used anywhere. And also, we're certainly going to be thinking about how we can use it in our work at Step Up Savannah, where we are focusing a lot on economic inclusion for low wealth communities of color. And so we'll be using these tools as we brainstorm around our strategic plan and make sure that we're serving our community. We'd love to hear from you about the workshop opportunity. And if you have any questions, you can certainly you can raise your hand, drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. Do we have any questions for Justin or any questions from our attendees about Step Up Savannah and our programming? Okay, well, we'd love to hear from you. Let us know if this workshop was helpful. And if there's things that you think about later, you can certainly shoot Justin an email, but you can also reach out to Step Up Savannah and we'll get that over to him as well. Thank you, Justin, for taking out your time to be with us today. Thank you, Grow with Google. And we're looking forward to sharing more content and more webinars with you throughout the remainder of the year. So thank you again. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.